Okay. All right. So I'm going to start again from where we started yesterday because we kind of stopped in the middle of a sentence, but we'll just go through quickly. Weinstein starts from Kuli. Omnam.
Omnam, about the 10th line?
Well, it's a little more. It's about the 12, 13. Omnam, so we concluded one form, one system, so to speak, of Rotzer V'Shuv, based on the Ahava that is caused by the Kiruv, by the special closeness that is exhibited on the part from one side, and that elicits Ahava from the other side. Omnam, however, in truth is Noida, it is known the Ho'ava Pnimis Yoiseir, that the Ahava is even more Pnimi, more deep, more internal, which means it is touching a truer element in the Nefesh. He shenase mimchinas horoim musdein soibaru. That is an ahava that is the result of the roimumus that is created by the roimumus Ein Sof. That's the supremacy of Ein Sof. Till now, we were talking about the ahava that is caused by the closeness of Ein Sof. Is manifesting an interest. And now we're talking about Bechinas Horoim was there in Seif. The Hainu, which is Kasher Mizboinin, when one reflects and delves into Eich Shekol HaHamshochas VaHagiluyim Bo'ilmus, he delves into recognizing that all the hamshochis, everything that is drawn and everything that is revealed in the worlds, gam bo'elam is yohinim, even in the higher worlds, hu rag haor levat, is merely a haor. Again, we have to understand what this hisbonenus is, how it actually, so to speak, operates. We already discussed this eich one time before. There is a hisbonus where you reflect and say that it is, this is, that the Atmos in itself is superior to all this. This is only a ha'ora. And then there is another type of hisbonus, which is called eich. It is based on how it is. Now, once you actually recognize and you actually experience this element, that this is a ha'ora levad, that is a completely different type of hisbonus. The hisbonus, that we went through this not long ago. That is an external, that is a very superficial type of recognition, where you know that this is how it is. That's the fact, not that you're experiencing it. You recognize in your own insight, in your own effect. You have the effect of the presence of the Elokus in the world, and that's an effect on you. And as you are experiencing that effect, you are recognizing that this is only ha'ora, this is not the real thing. Das meint echt. So the difference between these two is very clear and very significant.
The difference between that and the Eich?
Right. That does not, when you say, it is based on the fact that this is a Raimusin. So what? I'll give you an example. We discussed this one. It's important. I'm explaining the word eich. We did it recently. How he's been how this is the very experience of the Paltiel. Are only ha'ora. So I think maybe last time I also used the same metaphor. You say $1 million is a lot of money. $1,000 is a lot of money. $1 million is 1,000 times 1,000. It's very much. $1 billion is 1,000 millions. Oh, that's really a great amount. You're not experiencing that statement. Yes, you know that it is a lot. And it is 1,000 times the size. It's much more. When you bring it down to your own state of experience, completely different thing. Like you said last night, that if someone were to spend $1,000 a day, it would take him 3 years to empty out a $1 million account. And similar expenses, if you were to empty out $1 billion account, it would take him 3,000 years. That is bringing it down. That is where he actually experiences its enormity. It is not something that he knows about, but it's brought down to his own level and his own experience. It's a completely different effect. This is the eich. When one is into Elokus, and he identifies, like we said before, Ho Elokus, he identifies and he lives with the Elokus in the world. Like the Rambam says, that the primary realization for all wisdom, to provide for a basis for wisdom, is to realize that there is a first being from which everything emanates. And from the truth of his presence, this is where everything emanates from. Now, within this statement, there are two modes, two ways that a person relates to this statement. One is, he knows it as a piece of information. But then once he knows this piece of information, then he goes back into the world. It's the same world as before he knew it. Then there's a different completely different mode. So when he turns around and looks at the world, he sees it from a godly perspective. What's going on in the world? There has to be. He sees the godly element. Again, for example, we pointed out that when one encounters a table in the darkness, his first encounter is with the wood, and then if he feels its design, he may see that there is some kind of a purposeful design. But the reality that he's encountered is a piece of wood. On top of the wood, there is some kind of design. If one comes in and sees it from light to start with, he doesn't even notice the wood. He sees right away the human element, which is really an intangible element. And that human element, the table element, that completely depends. It exists only because there are human beings. The piece of wood exists on its own. And then it's used by human beings to make a table out of it. But when you look directly at the table element itself, which is so to speak a spiritual thing, relatively speaking. So that is maintained, that exists, not because there is wood that maintains it. That exists because there are human beings that recognize that have inspired this design. This is the principle, but the Rambam says. How are we supposed to look at the world from a Chochmah perspective? We explained many times that wisdom, Chochmah, Seichel, is not a means to figure out how physical objects operate. Seichel gives a perspective, says this is what exists. So Seichel gives the definition of what exists. It redefines the whole thing. Like when you are a simcha, it's not tables and chairs and food. He gives it a different. It identifies a different reality. It comes from a different angle completely. That's what seichel is. Seichel, in order that seichel should really be a reality, there has to be a sword. There has to be a godliness that maintains it. Just like the design of a table depends on there being a human being. That is a reality. That's a completely different thing. That's a real experience of the godly presence in the world. That is what he lives with. This is who identifies as real. Seichel relates only to that, really. So when he has this recognition and this seichel, and he really is tremendously impressed by the purity and the greatness of this truth, and then he realizes that this is not the real thing all the way. This is really the Elokus as it is manifest in the world, that accommodates for the world, that allows for the world. It's only a ha'or. Like in the case of the table. I see a table, oh, this is a human thing. But this is not, I'm not identifying the nefesh element in this, how this Inyan is in the nefesh itself. Like we said, a table perhaps is the midas hamalchus in a person. It's just an infinitely superior thing than a table. Yeah, and this is a table as it is defined and allows for its presence in the physical arena. That's only how. So when you start reflecting, hey, this is a human thing, but this is not the real thing. To understand the real spirit behind it. And to relate to the real spirit, it's a completely different thing. And that really, once one person really understands this, it does arouse an interest. What in fact is that human element? That inspires it.
But the first there's the ich, when he has to not only recognize that this is only a table, let's say, that this is something much greater, then the ich piece of it is to actually relate to it on his level, to make it personal.
No. To start with,
Yeah.
He is on a personal. And then from that, he delves into it and sees, and he's in his brain, and he feels, he experiences how that is only a ha'ara. What makes him say it's a ha'ara? Not his knowledge, logic. He actually experiences, hey, this is not the real thing. This is only the manifestation, how that applies into, how that can be captured in this physical world.
He realizes it's not the real thing from his experience, the fact that he has a nefesh that tells him that this is not the whole thing.
That's true, but that is the source of it. In the seichel itself, he senses that this is not the real thing.
Mm-hmm.
Once he delves into it, so you say, well, yeah, but still, this is just, it's still dependent. It's not independent of the design of the table. Mm-hmm. So it's not the real thing. You can still argue, like, this is where the whole confusion in the world is, that the whole thing is not really a nefesh thing, it's just a convenience that people discovered by training. That's what eich. Eich means that your seichel is a living seichel. It's not a piece of information. It actually lives at that level. That's what seichel. Otherwise, why is it necessary to know that as a first being in order to employ chokhmah? Can't you figure out that 1 + 1 is 2 without knowing that the Rebbe created the world? I mean, the entire enormous arena of scientific or worldly knowledge. Tell a scientist, you're really an idiot, because what you're looking at a living entity, and what you're seeing is a dead body. Says, what? Look what I know. I know that the sun is 93 million miles away from the earth. Can you imagine that? You know what I'm saying? The whole thing, it's only significant. In other words, all his boinus, this brings us close. His boinus means an intellectual experience. Not an intellectual study. This is the difference between human intellect and havdil, animal, quote-unquote, and intellect. There is no intellect over there. There is not an independent intellectual perception. The human being, his perception of things are on an intellectual level. So when he is misboinen, he's misboinen into this He realizes it, and then he's misborn and he delves into this and says, this is only ha'ara. Aval as museirin soif, but the very essence of Ein Soif, who moved alom roimam mehoilmes, it is remote and supremely remote mehoilmes. It's a completely different reality than worlds. Shalidei ze nase horotzu v'hatzimoy, whereby a rotzu, a drawing, and a thirst is affected. The bechinas atzmus ein soy baruch hu, to the bechin of atzmus ein soy. What is the emphasis of Atzmus Ein Sof? Ha'ora, as we speak all the time, Ha'ora is the manifestation. Ha'ora is how that truth affects that which is not part of that truth. How Alakus affects the world. That's a Ha'ora. Atzmus is how it is unto itself. Now, how it affects the world, for instance, we said about the table. The seichel that says a table is a valuable thing, and it serves well to a human being, and it's a human being, that then finds its design, finds its place in a physical table. That, from a worldly perspective, makes sense. It has a function. Its reality is in the fact that it has, that it designs the world in a proper human form, and allows the human being to live comfortably. It has a function. We understand what this is all about. But when you talk about the etzem, which means not how it has no functional result. The essence of the human soul. Like in our discussions, the fact that the human being stands on 2 feet, independent of he is not supported by the worldly surrounding, he's just held on by himself. That does not have a functional element. That simply is what a human being is. And to understand, to delve into this reality that is real unto itself, does not have any ramification, any functional ramifications. That is a completely different realm. This actually reflects the roimamus of a human being. That he stands in the world, but he's not dependent. He's in the world, but he's independent. He's not captured by it. He's not maintained by it. He's in his own. That's a roimamus. Roimamus of the neshama, of a human neshama. To understand that, I mean, when one says that, what is it? What is it about? In the worldly terms, you can understand. Because it doesn't have anything about it. It's just a completely different reality. This is the similar in your same that then he wants das mit Atzmus. Das ist at Etzem. Was meant Etzem? Etzem is that which stands on its own. Doesn't have any ramifications, any functional value. Come on. Reality itself.
Can I ask you a question? It's something we learned earlier, but it's connected to this point, I think. You had once explained that the Earth, the fact that it has water in the depths of the Earth, there's no function to that water. But yet, you also said that water, the fact that the Earth has water and molten, is a keli to represent the Koyach HaTzameach in the arts. Koyach HaTzameach in the arts seems functional. But yet we're calling this an etzem, essential kind of a thing. So I'm trying to understand.
Right. Well, the same question applies to what we're discussing now. The human soul affects that you should make a table or make a car. That fact that it makes a table, makes a car. That is not why the human soul has its qualities what it is. It's the opposite. Because of the human soul is such and such, therefore it affects the world that way. But that is not the value of this soul this way because it affects the world this way. Again, we're talking about the human soul. We've spoken about this many times, and then they recognize the significance of a human being in the world is not his effect on the world. It is his presence in the world. Not the functionality.
How does that?
The same thing is in the earth. The earth is a real a reality. It's a living entity. That is the first thing.
Then it has a Koyach.
Then it has all kinds of different ramifications.
Koyach HaTzameach is a derivative of the.
It's a derivative of that reality. Because if that were it would not be Koyach in the world is infinite. If that is what the earth consists of, it wouldn't be infinite.
Right. So the primary thing is that the earth is a living essence. Hashem made it a living, an essential reality.
An essential reality.
And therefore,
that's why there are all kinds of different ramifications. It's endless. Like a human being, I said, a human being, it has said, what is the presence? His presence makes the world. By what? By his presence.
and the earth and the water and the lava and all that stuff, that is a one second. That is as a result of being as a kid. That's the keli for to express the this essential reality of the earth.
That's right.
All these different.
This is what sets the Earth apart from the Moon, for instance, or from the other planets. On the surface, it's the same thing. It's not the same thing at all.
It's alive.
It's alive. You look at the Earth, you think you know what you're looking at.
But it's always emphasized that the main thing from the human being is how he is affecting the world.
But he's affecting the world by his presence, not by his actions. Two different things. He brings the world to a new status. All right, This will be it for this morning. This is your phone, so I don't know how to say goodbye.
Yeah.